Welcome to the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. Because sometimes you need a place to hang out where other people just like you would never do this. Like and subscribe for more content.
Hey guys, so I'd say probably about a month, maybe 2 months ago, we had a discussion about creating a heat mapping system for use for, say, businesses or home to really map out your wireless access points in your house. Now, if you've worked in the IT industry for any time period, you know that, generally speaking, appliance-based heat mapping equipment is very expensive. You also know that the ones that you could use for wireless devices like your Android or your iPhones are typically terrible and really only give you half the picture. They're semi-helpful when you do a walk around, but not really all that intuitive. If you've worked with the ones for Windows and Mac, then you know that they are equally as expensive and kind of clunky. Now, I'm going to tell you that there is one available for Linux, specifically for Ubuntu. I guess it technically could work on Mint, but it's not as easy to set up on Mint. So I would just suggest using just a core base LTS version of Ubuntu for your configuration, just like what we're looking at here. Now, we're currently sitting on a Windows 11 system, and we are remote desktoped currently into a Ubuntu 24.04 system. I believe it's 24.04, might be .02. I'm not up on all the versioning when it comes to Ubuntu. I generally run a Mint-based operating system or Fedora, but because we're going to do this for the sake of ease of configuration, it's best to use Ubuntu for it. So what are you going to need? Well, you're going to need at least a 10th gen i5, preferably an i7 processor. You're going to need at least 16 gigs of memory, but 2432 is better. Anything more than 16 is obviously better. You're going to need an NVMe drive. You can run a SATA SSD, but it's going to be a little clunky. It may not work correctly and it may freeze. This software will not work. Don't even bother if you're trying to run it on an 8th gen or a 6th gen or a 7th gen. It's way too heavy for that. You could try to run the heat mapping on a single pass mode, but the truth of the matter is it's not going to work all that well. The other thing you're going to need is an internal, or an external for that matter, wireless adapter. And that adapter should not be Broadcom based. Intel based would be the preferred versioning of drivers that you could use for the wireless heat mapping on Ubuntu. Now, like everything else, all the scripts that are used in here will be on the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel's website. So if you go there, you could grab these scripts. I'm not going to run through every single thing that we're going to do here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open my text editor so you can see specifically what is in each one of these scripts and what they do. Now you'll note that in here we have a commented out here that says break system packages. The reason why is because I want to install it as a global and not create virtualization platforms for Python scripts to run, mostly because this machine will only be used to do heat mapping when I go on site places. And since it's Linux based, I'm not really all that concerned with ransomware or other based attacks. And since the system has the encrypted drive in the event that I'd leave it somewhere or whatever else, it's encrypted, so I'm not really overly concerned with all that other configuration. And since nothing else will literally be on this system outside of just the heat mapper, really makes no difference to me. Now, if you're going to do this the right way, then realistically, you shouldn't run these scripts. You should go through the configuration and create the virtualized platform for running your Python scripts. I don't care because, again, this is just going to be used basically for basic heat mapping of wireless infrastructure. So let's run through how to run these. So what I'm going to do is actually open Terminal. And in the Terminal, I'm going to change directory to the heat mappings folder that is located in Documents. So I'm just going to do CD Documents. I'm going to do CD Heat. I'm going to do Clear so I can start at the top here. I'm going to do sudo bash. And I'm going to do Ubuntu heatmapper1.sh. And I'm going to hit Enter. So now what this is going to do is it's going to run through the installation configuration and settings for the initial setup for the heat mapping portion and then reboot. And once that system comes back up, we'll log into it again and run version 2 or second portion script for the Ubuntu heat mapping software. Okay, so the system just came back up. And something important that you should keep in mind is that on the initial reboot after the first script runs, it will take a little while for the system to come back up. So just keep that in mind. It's because it adjusts the page file or the swap file in the actual system to support the heat mapping software later on in the process. Okay, so once we're back in the command line, we're going to just change directory again to our documents and then heat mappings, and then sudo bash ubuntu heatmapper2.sh. We'll hit enter. We'll authenticate, and there we go. It'll go through the process now of installing the second portion of the required packages for our heat mapping software. Now, while this is running, I do want to point out that you could just go through the actual Git repository and manually install this by just doing the sudo pip install, I think it's just WHM, and then be done with it. The reason why I didn't go that route is because I ran into a bunch of bugs and problems with the application, and it just didn't work correctly on my hardware. Now, my hardware specifically, for the sake of this, I'm just running a Dell laptop. And the reason why I'm running a Dell laptop is because Ubuntu has proprietary drivers that work on basically all Dells without really any complaints, because Vostro machines come pre-built with Ubuntu on them in other countries outside the US. And as a result, the driver support is just there for Ubuntu running on Vostro or Dell-based hardware. So with that said, let's continue on through the scripting process here and get the rest of this package installed, and then we'll jump into how to actually use this. Okay, so we just rebooted, but now we're back up. Gonna once again sudo bash ubuntu heatmapper3.sh. We'll hit enter. Great. There we go. We're doing the installation. We get the warning because, once again, we are saying to break the system package and not follow the traditional configuration. We do get an error here, which we may have to jump back and take a look to see specifically what that error pertains to. Or for that matter, whether or not it matters in our configuration. Presumably won't matter, but let's see what happens here when this finishes out. Okay, so it finished. We do get that error, so I'm going to actually leave this open. I'm just going to minimize it for the time being. And I'm going to open up another one, a different window for a terminal, and jump back into my specific files under my documents, my heat mapping, and then in here I'm going to see the run, and I'm going to actually open this in text editor so we can take a look at this. And this could actually all be closed out. I'm not a huge fan of the Ubuntu version of the text editor. It's kind of annoying if I'm honest, but anyway. So the next thing we have to do is we actually have to create a JSON file for a configuration, and in order to do that, we're just going to copy what's in here. And we're going to paste this in here so we can run. Okay, so the error we were getting there, which bizarrely, and I don't really know why, seems to be a result of the Kiwi solver through Python. For whatever reason, while it was installed, it was throwing an error that it wasn't installed properly or configured correctly. So in order to fix that, I've added the commented out section here for sudo to remove the actual Python 3 Kiwi resolver. So if you get this error here again during the installation process, just run this, and then you'll have to run the actual sudo pip install WHM again one more time, and it'll reinstall the Kiwi solver package as part of the heat mapping software. It's kind of bizarre because I didn't get this error before when I installed it the first time on the same machine running the exact same script. So there's got to be something specific with the updates or something with the package manager that comes, something gets foobarred in the process of the installation, I'm sure. So at this point, we should be good now to test this. So if we go back in here and we run the Bootstrap configuration, hopefully this gives us a better answer, a better output. It sure does. So it'll indicate here, we'll see, please target the wireless interface to run the benchmark from. So if we go into our actual command here, and we do an ifconfig, we're going to see the names of the actual adapters. So on my particular wireless adapter, we're going to see it here listed as WLP0S20F3. So if I copy this, and I come over here and I paste it, and
What'll happen now is it's going to connect to my wireless access point, and it's going to give an output specifically of what my wireless name is. And once it gives me the wireless name, it's going to show me that's the wireless configuration that it's going to use to scan the rest of the wireless access points around the local area, as well as do a heat map specifically on the signal quality from the location that you're currently standing to the location of where the wireless access point is. And you'll have to define where you're physically standing when you do run the heat map. It'll give you an option to right-click on the JPEG image you'll create for your blueprint as to where you're physically standing. And then it'll map from that physical point to where the actual access point is. And that's how it gives you the actual heat map of the actual location. Now we're going to get prompted for how many times do we want to repeat the benchmarking. Now, in this situation, you don't actually want to run it more than like 2 times, 3 times at the max. The reason why is because if you're running an older hardware like I am, I'm on an 11th gen. If you're running on a 10th gen, probably 2 times the max. If you're running on a 14th or a 15th gen with like 24 cores, knock yourself out. You can probably run it 20 times if you want to. But on older hardware, it will cause the system to puke. So I would tell you not to do it any more than 2 times. So it'll do 2 passes to confirm what's actually around you from a wireless heat mapping perspective. Okay, so now it's going to ask us what we want to do as far as supported graphs, right? So we do want to do signal quality percentage, signal strength, the latency, speed test and download bandwidth, speed test with upload bandwidth. And again, as you walk around in your blueprint, because you will need a blueprint, as you walk around in the blueprint, you can run all of these tests at separate points as to where you're standing. So that'll give you a better understanding as to what your download bandwidth is like on one side of a building versus another side of the building. So for this sake, I'm going to simply type all and hit enter. And you're going to see here the successfully configured the bootstrap configuration. And then you're going to see where the actual bootstrap configuration is. And it's part of the home.json file. So when you do the installation, if you actually use the documentation I put together, it gives you a breakout as to what the heck the names of all this stuff is and how this works as far as the naming convention is concerned. Now once you have this done, assuming you have a blueprint, because you're going to need one, generally speaking you want to use a JPEG file that you create, and you can actually just create a box from like Microsoft Paint and save it as a JPEG file, and then use that file as your blueprint, and then just walk around your house and pick up the heat map and the wireless signatures of the surrounding area, which will give you kind of an understanding as to what that works. How that works is basically WHM benchmark. They're going to do -M, and then you're going to do the path to where your JPEG file is. And then you're going to use the actual home.json file we just created for the configuration. And then once you run it, you can literally take the laptop, lift it up off the desk, and just walk the actual blueprint and make notes. So you could create, I was here when I ran this. So you create like a little almost like a pin drop as to where you were standing when you were running it based off of your blueprint. And then you know how much signal you had, how much signal you don't have. You could add naming convention in there. So if you're in Judy's office and you run it in Judy's office, you could put was in Judy's office, ran it at this pinpoint, this is what my bandwidth looks like. And then move on to the next office and work your way through the entire building until you have an understanding of a complete heat mapping of the entire infrastructure. So I want to give you guys just an understanding as to how this works. So I'll give you a taste of one of the ones I did recently for a home user that just requested me to come in their home. They couldn't figure out why it was when they were in their master bedroom over here, why they had no wireless access. But then in the middle of the house, everything worked great. They had 2 access points literally on a console behind a television. So I ran a heat map and we created just a base JPEG file of what the house layout looked like, at least from where I was sitting. So after I created that, I just did a walk around and I ran the thing in multiple different places. And as I ran it, you could actually see the saturation change. So red is we have tons of signal. Yellow and white is we have a little bit of signal. And blue is basically no signal at all. So once we did the walk around, we were able to add a repeater here and a repeater here and actually expand the full wireless access to the entire house. Now, while this looks small because it is small and zoomed in because it is a JPEG file, the house was actually huge. I think it was close to 6,000 square feet. So when you came over here, there was a drastic difference in the amount of space between here and here, not to mention multiple walls that were actually concrete reinforced walls for fire protection. So, you know, the house I think had been expanded over the time. I think originally it was right around here that it was actually built out. So anything over in here has no service. Anything that over in here has full service. Anything on the second floor, which is just this piece right here, has full service. People out in the garage have no service. Again, people in the bedroom have no service. So because of that firewall, because of the build out on the actual house, and because the house is absolutely tremendous, and that they only have 2 wireless access points, they just had no internet when it came to over here. And then if they were working out in the yard over here, they had full internet. But if they were way down here somewhere else because they had a huge piece of property, they also had no internet. So again, added a repeater, and at that point, they had full internet, full saturation, and good signal across the entire house. But that's why this is a usable piece of application, a usable heat mapper that's basically free as long as you got a spare laptop to run it. And once again, all of this configuration will be in the Generic Tech Support website, so feel free to grab it from there. Hopefully this was helpful. Sorry this was so short. If there's anything I can do for any of you guys, if you run into any issues with the installation, just make sure you take a copy of the actual output where the error occurs. And you could either post it in the chat here or send me over an email. Check them probably every couple days to see if there's anything from the channel on the actual email server itself. So if you throw something in there and I reply, great. If I don't, then I'll create a video rebuttal or something to that effect to see if I can help you out with solving whatever the issue is that you run into. Been really busy with work, been really busy with contracts, so I do apologize for the lack of continuous videos or the sporadic posting of videos, but anybody in the IT world can tell you that when work occurs, it's usually a ton of it, and when the contract's over, you usually have a little bit of free time, and then it just explodes again, and it turns into a crazy fiasco, and that's pretty much what's been going on in my life over the past couple months. Something I didn't mention in this video is that everything that we did in this video that caused an error has been resolved on the Generic Tech Support website. In those scripts, the scripts are updated so they don't contain the error context anymore. However, there is the output information if you run into the error, what the fix is for the errors that I did see during the installation process of this particular system. Also note that while I did mention that this is free, the Python GUI isn't free. You have to pay for that. It's $99 license for commercial. So if you're going to run this for commercial, it's $99. If not, you could sign up on their website for free, and you could get basically the hobbyist version of the software free of charge. They'll give you a hobbyist license key that you can put in. So if you're going to run it just for home use or for just running it as a hobby to see what exists at certain places. Heck, you could even carry your laptop with you at Starbucks and figure out where the Wi-Fi access points are, or walk around a mall or wherever else and pick up all the wireless access points, or throw the laptop on your seat next to your car, put together a rough idea of what, take a screenshot of your Google Maps and just drive around, and you could actually pinpoint specifically where all the Wi-Fi access points are in your neighborhood, which is kind of cool too. So again, from a hobbyist standpoint, it could be a lot of fun. Throw something down in the comments. Definitely check out the website. That's where all the installation information is. Let me know if you guys have issues, and thanks again for watching. Thank you for watching the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. Find the content of this video at https://generictechsupport.com/#channel.